Attorneys for a teenager accused of killing his mother are fighting to waive his case to juvenile court. Let's bring in defense attorney Dan Adams. Dan, you are not affiliated with the cases we're going to be talking about today. We're talking about the case against Reed Galinsky, and he's accused of killing his mother, plotting to kill his father after watching a Netflix documentary about the Menendez brothers. He's a teenager, wants to get his case moved from adult court to juvenile court. How difficult would that be?
Very difficult. For children, if they're charged with first-degree intentional homicide, and we've seen people down to the age of 10, 11 years old in Wisconsin, which we've reported on, the exclusive jurisdiction of those first-degree intentional homicide cases is adult court. And so that's why we know his name. He's being depicted in the news. He's being treated as an adult. He's doing what's called a reverse waiver request, asking for a hearing, which is his right, to have a judge go through a three-factor test. Whether or not he can be best rehabilitated in either the juvenile or the adult system, whether or not being in the juvenile system would unduly depreciate the offense, and whether or not which system would act as a deterrent to other youth. It sounds almost like a sentencing hearing, which they're going to have, so it's an inside-out type of process in the criminal justice system where we usually have presumption of innocence. Here he's going to have this kind of almost sentencing hearing with experts, psychologists, to go through and say which area should he be best served in, adult or juvenile court. It's an uphill battle.
And his father is, according to the criminal complaint, a target of this murder plot, but he has been granted, the father has, supervised visitation rights with his son. Could that get muddy at all in the criminal case?
No. Listen, we have a case where we know that he's caught at the house. He points the police to the murder weapon. He says, I did it. There's a later interview with him. I don't know that what happened is going to be the question in this case. It's really going to be why. And, depending on the reverse waiver, I think we'll see a not guilty by insanity defense, at least pursued by the defense. We also know that he had kind of been using prescription pills that weren't prescribed to him. So there's a lot going on, and we're really early in the case. Obviously, this is a very troubled child, and we have to learn why this happened.
Let's talk about the now former Milwaukee police officer charged in federal court with charges that relate to corruption, providing information to a convicted felon, offering to sell guns to this convicted felon. Why do you think this case went to federal court as opposed to staying in state court?
When I read the news and later the indictment, the complaint today about this case, I almost fell off my chair. This is almost a Hollywood movie type corruption case. You remember The Departed with Matt Damon, who's kind of the inside man in a police agency for an outside criminal organization. There is that type of element here. We have a police officer who is generating temporary license plates for stolen cars, trying to buy a stolen car for $3,000 or $5,000. It was a 2021 Lexus valued at $30,000, transacting in guns, including machine guns, with a known felon, with someone who is out there trying to find his opposition gang members. And this allegedly, this defendant was helping him find their location with police resources. It's absolutely outrageous. Because of the seriousness, the federal government got involved. They have a lot of resources, and how this came to their attention was a search warrant on a federal case. So they found his cell phone last month, and that's what unwound this whole case.
And finally, we want to talk about another disturbing case this week, that possible sex slave operation, a real estate agent charged in this case. And we learned that there is a woman who is connected to this case, not charged, but she is a defense attorney, Kristen St. Pierre. Do you expect any charges against her?
And a former assistant district attorney in the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office. This is, again, another case where my jaw just dropped because of not just the salacious nature of it, but who's involved. We don't usually see high-profile realtors for the Maher Realty Company, another attorney who's well-known in the courthouse, engaged in this type of activity. Obviously, in this case, there's going to be a lot of discussion about consent. We know that the two women who were alleged to have been assaulted voluntarily were in this house, were members of some type of polyamorous situation. When did that switch from a consensual situation to a non-consensual situation? The district attorney's complaint seems to put that into writing, that there were certain acts that happened that were non-consensual, and that's what brought this to law enforcement's attention.
A lot of these cases just getting started, so we'll be talking about them for quite a while. Dan, always good to talk to you, sir.
You bet.